For more than 3 centuries, the Romanov dynasty ruled Russia with divine authority. But in the early 20th century, one man would witness its final and tragic fall. His name was Nicholas II, the last emperor of Russia. A man born into unimaginable wealth and crowned with imperial power, yet destined to watch it all crumble. Nicholas Alexandrovich Romanov was born in 1868, the heir to the Russian throne. Raised in opulence behind palace walls, he was the son of Tsar Alexander III and Empress Maria Fyodorovna. Though he was groomed for kingship, many believed he lacked the boldness and leadership qualities of his father. He was quiet, deeply religious, and emotionally reserved. In 1894, after the sudden death of Alexander III, 26-year-old Nicholas assumed the throne. Almost immediately, he married Princess Alex of Hesse, a German-born royal who became Empress Alexandra Fyodorovna. The two were genuinely in love, a rarity in royal circles, but their bond would eventually isolate them from the court and the Russian people. Nicholas's rule came during a time of sweeping change. Russia, vast and rich in resources, was crumbling beneath inequality. The aristocracy lived in luxury, while peasants and workers endured crushing poverty. Industrialization was booming, but unrest followed in its shadow. In 1905, discontent exploded. On what would be called Bloody Sunday, peaceful protesters marched to the Winter Palace to petition the Tsar. Imperial guards opened fire, killing and injuring hundreds. The trust between Nicholas and his people was shattered. In response, Nicholas reluctantly agreed to the creation of the Duma, a parliamentary body. But he continued to govern autocratically, dissolving the Duma whenever it opposed him. Change came slowly, if at all, and the people grew restless. At home, Nicholas and Alexandra were devoted parents. They had 5 children, 4 daughters and a son, Alexei. The young Tsarevich suffered from hemophilia, a condition that left him vulnerable to bleeding and infection. His illness was a closely guarded secret, and the family turned to an unorthodox healer, Grigory Rasputin. Rasputin's presence at court scandalized Russian society. He wielded surprising influence over Alexandra, who believed he could save her son. But Rasputin's reputation as a manipulative mystic with ties to the Empress became a symbol of royal decay. In 1916, he was assassinated by nobles hoping to save the monarchy's reputation, but it was too late. Then came the First World War. In 1914, Russia entered World War I against Germany and Austria-Hungary. Nicholas hoped the war would unite his people. Instead, it led to disaster. The Russian army, poorly equipped and poorly led, suffered staggering losses. Nicholas made the ill-fated decision to command the army himself, leaving Alexandra in charge of domestic governance. Under her leadership and Rasputin's behind-the-scenes influence, public confidence in the monarchy plummeted. Corruption, incompetence, and hunger swept across the empire. Soldiers deserted, workers went on strike, and calls for revolution filled the streets. By 1917, the empire was collapsing. In Petrograd, demonstrations erupted. Bread riots turned into full-blown rebellion. Soldiers joined the protesters. Nicholas, far from the capital, was powerless. On March 15, 1917, under immense pressure, he abdicated the throne, first for himself, and then for his son. The Romanov dynasty had fallen. Nicholas and his family were placed under house arrest, first in the Alexander Palace and later in Siberia. Still, many hoped the royal family might be exiled or saved. But when the Bolsheviks took power later that year, hope ran out. In July 1918, fearing the advancing anti-Bolshevik forces might rescue the Romanovs, the new regime made a grim decision. In the early hours of July 17th, Nicholas, Alexandra, their 5 children, and a few loyal servants were led into the basement of the Ipativ house in Ekaterinburg. They were told they were being moved. Instead, they were executed, shot, stabbed, and buried in a forest. The Romanovs were gone. The empire they ruled was gone. The new Soviet Union had no place for kings. For decades, their fate was a mystery. It wasn't until the 1990s that their remains were recovered and identified. In 2000, the Russian Orthodox Church canonized Nicholas and his family as martyrs, recognizing their suffering and tragic end. Nicholas II remains one of history's most debated monarchs. As a man, he was gentle, loving, and committed to his family. As a ruler, he was indecisive and resistant to change in an era that demanded transformation. His fall marked not only the end of an empire, but also the collapse of centuries-old autocracy in Russia. From the glittering halls of the Winter Palace to a dark cellar in Ekaterinburg, the story of Nicholas II is one of love, faith, power, and irreversible downfall. His fall marked not only the end of an empire, but also the collapse of centuries-old autocracy in Russia. From the glittering halls of the Winter Palace to a dark cellar in Ekaterinburg, the story of Nicholas II is one of love, faith, power, and irreversible downfall. He was born a czar, crowned by fate, and buried by history. His legacy stands as both a tragedy and a warning, a lesson in how empires end when they fail to evolve with their people.